So Gladiator 2 for me was a solid sequel, and for me you could argue that this movie shouldn't have been made because it wasn't needed. And I technically agree with that because in a way it wasn't needed. The first one was perfect, you could have left it there and that'd be it. But this one was good enough to go, it's a sequel to the original film, and it met my lower expectations, because when I watched Gladiator the first time the other week, I was like, this sequel's going to be pretty shit compared to this, and it weren't pretty shit. I don't think it was a million miles away like we've seen with other franchises where they've rebooted it a big gap afterwards, like we saw with Son of the Mask that was released, and we was like, oh my god, it's another Mask sequel, and then we're like, oh my god, that was a Mask sequel? Fucking hell.
Yes, it's Tim, no win, Avery!
Yeah, I still question why Son of the Mask was made, and I think that guy was clearly on fucking drugs, let's be honest. I think every franchise that comes back after a hiatus of a gap or whatever tries to lean into nostalgia, and this is exactly what this film did. Jurassic World did it, you could look at Creed did it, every film that tries to link to something in the past leans into nostalgia, because that is a cheap thrill, and if it's used once and once only, it goes, that was fucking good, that linked to my childhood and everything, and you get carried away with the emotions. Apart from, I think in this version, it was a little bit different, because they didn't just lean into nostalgia, they repeated nostalgia by replaying most of the entire film, with Lucius's story being practically identical to Maximus's. Let's be honest, I think you don't have to be an absolute scientist or a rocket expert to notice that there's a lot of similarities between a lot of what's going on in this film and what happened in Gladiator 1. And that, for me, is sort of annoying, because you go on about he didn't come up with anything fresh or exciting or whatever, but I weren't bored in the film. It was exciting. And there were a few differences, obviously, in this one. The gladiators fought animals, and obviously the killing of his wife happened at the start of the film, right at the very start of the film, and that then led him onto a path of being a gladiator after being taken and whatever. But for me, I think there was little differences, but most of the main core of the plot of Guy is a fighter, Guy is fighting in a war, to then becoming a gladiator, to then becoming a guy defeating the main emperor or ruler of Rome, and that cycle seems to repeat itself from not only Gladiator 1, but in also Gladiator 2. I felt that was a little bit lazy, and it felt more like this was for newer fans, rather than, if you haven't seen Gladiator 1, and you was wanting to see what's Gladiator 2 all about, oh, watch Gladiator 2, oh, that was fucking amazing. Without watching the first one, you'd have thought that was a great film, and an amazing film, and one of the best films you've probably ever seen. But then, if you watch Gladiator 1, you'll realise, oh, this film's identical to the one I've just seen, just with little tweaks and changes, and I think I don't mind that, and I think for the older fans, it was mostly like, oh, we've got nostalgia for you guys, like, we've got this thing about Maximus, Lucius is linked to Maximus and all this shit, and we've got a few characters from Gladiator 1, but that's all it leaned on, nostalgia, taking it back to when it came out in 2000, all these little things like that, that's what it tried to aim for, but I don't think the actual film itself was that fresh and unique as what it seemed to be at first. I think, though, that the main thing that came out of this film, which was like, okay, that's fresh, that's exciting, that's new, that's great, was Denzel Washington's performance, because I thought he was fucking amazing in this film. I thought he did an absolute great job at helping to carry several scenes and bring seriousness to this film. In parts when you thought, like, the film slipping away or potentially getting to the point where it might be a little bit boring, then came Denzel Washington to bring the excitement, bring that suspense, and bring that sort of antagonist, sort of protagonist feel, because you didn't know what he was. It was like, at first he seemed to be a nice guy to Lucius. He seemed to be an okay, even though he owned him, and even though he was forcing him to kill people as a gladiator, it was one of those where he still wasn't an antagonist. I don't know if that's just because he was Denzel Washington and you love Denzel Washington, or it was simply because, like, you was trying to make up your mind whether he's an antagonist or a protagonist, and I think there was a lot of that going on as well with Pedro Pascal as well, like thinking, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? I'm not really sure, because he sort of sits in the middle of his own philosophies and his own principles sort of way. And I think that's what Denzel Washington was great at doing, being able to hook you in, make you want to sit and watch and focus, because you could not miss a scene when Denzel Washington was in the shot. And I think that's what was great about that. And his character of Macrinus just felt like a weird sort of tyrant towards the end of the film, whereas that's not what we saw at the beginning of the film. It felt like real character development all the way through the film, of him gaining power and him gaining struggle. And towards the back end of the film, he thinks one emperor killed the other emperor, and then he kills the other emperor, in which was pretty fucking like, oh, this is Denzel Washington. He's now an antagonist, as opposed to being in that middle. I think that confirmed that he was the main villain all along. And then they have a fight at the end, and that settles who's going to be the leader of the Rome at the end. And for me, that was fine. That was great. And yeah, I think Denzel Washington, did a great job at helping to carry this film. For me, the ending of the general siding with Lucius near the end was great, because it seemed at the start of the film that Lucius was going to go on a thing of going on and killing the general, because the general killed his wife. And that was a brutal thing that kept on playing in his head, and it seemed like the revenge angle that we saw in Gladiator. Kills family, so I need to go and kill you and put an end to this. However, he wouldn't have gained much if he'd have killed the general, because he weren't the head of the snake. He was just being told orders. He was just told where to go, what to do. You fight this army, and he was conflicted. That's why I would say that the general, played by Pedro Pascal, wasn't really an antagonist. He wasn't a protagonist neither. He sat in the middle all the way through the film, because he did the right things for his family, but he also did wrong things in the process of that. But he was just doing what he was told by the emperors. And I think Lucius could see that the orders were coming from above him, so he had to kill the head of the snake and take out that, so that Rome could change into the mold of what Maximus actually wanted before he ended up dying in the last film. So I think, yeah, that was interesting. But then when he spares the life of the general, that's where the emperors are like, well, we made up his mind anyways, the general's going to die. So whatever happens, he's going to die. They shoot him, they kill him. Then everything seemed to change from that moment on in the film, as we saw that Lucius now was gathering an army together, which was used with the word of Maximus and friends of Maximus to help to fight Rome and to get Rome back to the way Maximus actually wanted. And that was pretty cool. And he then had to fight off what looked to be a 1 versus about 100 different soldiers to protect his mum. And that then turned into an army of his versus about 10 soldiers. And then there was a big battle commencing then, which weren't a bad ending to the film, but in the crossfire. And obviously, because Marinus is now killing emperors and wanting the power for himself, he then takes out his mum, because then he would be next onto the throne as the emperors are gone and she's dead. So he would now be the next in line to be the sort of leader. And so, yeah, I think then the movie just turns into, well, this is now going to be a revenge angle between Lucius and Macrinus, because obviously he's killed his mum, and he gave out orders and killed the emperor, whatever. So it all comes down to this fight, and it's pretty good. They exchange words, then they have a little fight. Obviously, Lucius comes out on top, and that's where the film basically ends, with him being the one now who's brought back together Rome in the image of what his dad wanted. Before we jump back into this video, guys, please do us a massive favour and smash that subscribe button, because you do not want to miss a thing this week, next week, and the week after, because we've got tons and tons of content planned for you guys. And you can do us a massive favour by smashing that subscribe button, joining the community, getting updates to all the latest videos, from the YouTube shorts to the actual videos. It is well worth it, completely free, and you will not regret it. So to summarise this movie then, this is easily a 7.4 out of 10 and a great film. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments down below. Is it good, bad, terrible, amazing? Let us know all that jazz down in those comments down below. And if you haven't yet seen our review on Incredibles 2, give that a watch now.